Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Soft Rebellion. My name is Ntache and thank you so much for joining me. So it just occurred to me that it might not be common practice that people really think about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, where they are, just introspecting on their lives and taking stock, of what's happening internally. We are constantly being fed information, like every minute of our lives is constantly being bombarded by sensory inputs. If we're resting, we're watching something, talking to people, there's always a noise in the background. We're driving, there's something playing in the background. It's hardly that we have time to sit with our thoughts and really check what's happening inside. And this occurred to me because I obviously use these recordings as a way for me to do that. But it's something I've also been doing much longer than before I started this podcast, because actually I used to just sit and think about my thoughts. Like, I don't have a TV at home. I don't have a music system. Sometimes I even forget where my earphones are because I don't really listen to music. I sit in the silence. I sit with my thoughts. I sit in the dark sometimes and just be with me. And this can happen like for as long as I can spend an entire weekend without having had any sensory input. I think the only form of outside or external input that I get is through social media. I do spend time on TikTok and also on Instagram, but lately I've just been noticing how boring it is, but also how overly stimulating at the same time because of these Epstein files, which has got me wrecked, right? I think my nervous system is on high alert and I'm just not trusting anything, and I'm going down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. And as much as I was going down that rabbit hole, I had this awareness that, hey, I'm not thinking my own thoughts. I'm not thinking about the things I want to think about. I'm going down this rabbit hole because there's an input that I made or a video that I watched, and it's just propelled or perpetuated this rabbit hole I'm now going under. And before you know it, I've spent like an hour, 2 hours going down this rabbit hole about everything that's happening in Hollywood and how it's tied to all the decision makers, right? All these influential people. And I've also had an opportunity to observe, people in my life as well, especially the younger generations. Could be my little sister or my nephew and their interactions with their phones and social media and, right? Like, young people are constantly glued to their phones. And it is such a huge concern because outside of that, there isn't anything that young people are doing. Like, or at least to the extent that we used to spend time outside, they are doing more so. They're spending more time on their devices. And that's concerning. I've also seen videos about how therapists, for instance, would say they're seeing an increase of kids as young as 2-3 years old, between the ages of 2 to 4, seeing them for the first time. And this isn't something they used to experience in the past. And the reason that's the case is because kids are exposed to screen from an early age. And what the screen does is that it messes up with your nervous system, obviously. And you're constantly seeking that dopamine hit such that you can't sit, in boredom. Like, you're not able to sit with your thoughts and think or whatever, right? And boredom is the thing that allows you to think outside of what you're being told to think about. Because being on the socials, that's someone else telling you what to think about. That's someone else giving you a perspective, conditioning your mind to think a particular way, to prioritize certain things. And it's very polarizing. But when you sit with something by yourself without external influence, you're able to investigate for yourself what it is that you truly believe, how you feel about certain things without regurgitating what you've heard, So it occurred to me anyway today such a long-winded way of saying this, but it occurred to me that we don't do this often. We don't sit in boredom and like think about our thoughts and really investigate what's happening inside. And as a result, we're just walking around being sedated by whatever it is that's happening on social media or someone else's idealized version of what is or what the world should be like. And I think as a consequence, even our own lives are almost a consequence of the sedated version of consuming or consuming data without necessarily interrogating or being active in making decisions about what your life should look like. Think about it this way. Like, if you don't get to sit and think about what it is that you want, what you want your life to look like, what decisions you're taking to make that happen, you're just on autopilot. Like, you wake up every day and go to this job that you've got, you do what is expected of you, you come back home, scroll on social media, continue the same cycle without really having the foresight about, okay, in 5-10 years time, this is how I want my life to look like. And in order for me to do that, I'll need to do 1, 2, 3. And these are the steps I'm taking to make sure that I achieve that goal. We don't do that anymore. Like, that's not something that happens. Yes, maybe in the beginning of the year, because it's really cool to think about resolutions and make plans and everything. But in terms of actively making steps or making decisions that act in the interest of those visions, that's not something that we do. Like, I think about this exercising thing as well, which is such a great example to this point. You have certain goals about what you want to achieve through exercise. For me, it's to be healthy, to live longer, and when I'm older, to still be independent, right? To be able to do things for myself, to not live in pain, but have the flexibility, the athleticism, the strength to do things by myself. I don't want to live in a home. I don't want to hire help for things that I can do myself. I still want to travel and go up a flight of stairs, right, to the beach and run for fun well into my 50s, my 60s as well. And that's why I exercise. And so it's important that I show up every day or as often as I can, as regularly as I can. And that means I have to wake up even when it's not convenient to do so. I try to do 4 workouts a week, and I mean, I've been doing that quite consistently. But exercising has now become a part of my life. Like, it's not something I envision stopping at any point, because I've accepted that, hey, this is a part of my life. It's not even something I have to think about anymore. It just is one of those things, like brushing your teeth, It just has to happen. But if you say, oh, I want this life and whatnot, but your actions don't really tally to the kind of life that you want, then you're lying to yourself. I think there's a certain perspective that we create, or a certain image that we create about the kind of life that we want. And when our actions don't match up to that image, then it's really just a dream. There's no tangible steps that we're taking to actualize that. So I think a lot of us are stuck in this dream world where we want to be these people who are financially independent, these people who are happier and healthier, but our daily actions are different. Our daily actions are telling a different story. Our daily actions are that we wake up and we consume content that someone else has thought about, and we internalize ideas and thoughts that someone else has talked about, or that someone else has decided. I think about how desensitized we are to abuse, for instance, to really graphic images and content. And that's because that kind of content is being perpetuated on the socials, Yes, everyone's social media looks different based on what they consume, but I can almost promise you we are so desensitized to the most atrocious things in the world. Pornographic content, for instance, that's readily available. It's not something that we bat an eye about. When I log into my Netflix account, for instance, there's usually, on the landing page where you see other accounts, they'd be advertising new shows and everything. And I'm like, my nephew is there, my 14-year-old nephew has an account there, but the landing page already has half naked women and men. And it's about, these overly sexual images, which surely must be doing something to a young brain. Like, I remember when I was young, and the first time I'd see seriously pornographic content, it was jarring. And I must have been in varsity, I think. That was shocking to my system. So can you imagine, to a 14-year-old? And he probably started seeing pornographic content much earlier on in his life. But because we're so desensitized, like, we don't even bat an eye, like, it's not even something that we're outraged about. It's just become so normal and a part of everyday life. And just on this, rabbit hole that I'm thinking about with the Harvey Weinsteins of this world, and all the celebrities are implicated in pedophilia, I think about the age gap relationships and how normalized they've become in society, partly or largely because of the age difference relationships that we've seen in Hollywood. In the beginning they were laughable, even gossip worthy, but now it's like, it's so normal, guys, and that's not okay. Like, it's not okay. And I think part of the reason why we're okay with it and we aren't doing something, we aren't outraged, we aren't canceling people, aren't calling people to account, is because our minds have been conditioned to think that's okay. Our minds aren't our own anymore. Our minds and thoughts don't belong to us anymore. They belong to someone else. They belong to someone else. And therefore our decision making isn't even our own, because we aren't acting on these things that we notice about society that are so inherently wrong, including our buying power, like decisions about what products we consume. Those are also conditioned because our heavy social media use. We get targeted ads so many times. You probably scroll twice before you get an ad, and every platform that you use, it could just be a search engine, and there would be adverts there that are targeted based on your habits on social media, based on what you use the most, So I've really been thinking about that. And the reason I'm also thinking about it is because I do tend to reflect, and this being a part of reflecting, but I'm also realizing that it's not a common practice with people. And I really do want to encourage you guys to start reflecting, because it's amazing what you're going to find dormant when you do that. I mean, I'm recently learning about some of the blind spots I've got. I mean, I think I'm amazing. I believe that wholeheartedly. But it was so surprising to me to learn that other people experience me differently, I don't know if it's got to do with this newly found identity of me prioritizing myself. But it's really opened my eyes to think, hey, someone else doesn't see you as selfless. To someone else, you've been taking. And that's not something I was aware of, because I just thought, oh, no, I'm amazing. I do this, I do that. But certain actions that I may have taken because of my own overthinking, I'm not above that, may have left someone else feeling differently, and that is valid. And because I want that person in my life, I do have to act differently. I do have to show up in ways that matter to them, that mean something to them, that lets them know that they're just as valuable to me as I am to them, So otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't sitting with myself and really interrogating some of my decisions and actions. But if we're just literally going every day, like you're stuck in this cycle, you open your eyes, you scroll on social media, you laugh about this thing, send to your friend, go to work, in between whatever tasks you've got, you're scrolling on social media again. Like, when do you have a moment to just be, to exist, to live life? Not because you're going to post about it, but because it's your everyday life, It's what you want to do. Not because it's this new cool hangout spot that you want to check it out because it's trending on TikTok, But because it's something you're genuinely interested in. When was the last time you went outside and literally walked on the grass sat and felt the sun on your skin. Well, that's something that matters to me. And that's why I love hiking, because I get to be outside and really burn my skin and feel the sun energizing me. But when was the last time you did something that you like? Do you even know what you like? Or are you just filled with these bucket list items because those are the trending things on social media? Those are the popular things on social media, So when you don't take the time to really interrogate your own thoughts and feelings, you don't even know who you are. Like, you don't even know what you like. And I imagine, like, you'd wake up 10, 15, 20 years from now not being able to recognize who you are because you've gotten stuck into this life automatically, because you're operating from an autopilot perspective, so yeah, I'd really like to encourage us that we must interrogate our thoughts more. Who's saying that you like? I was talking to a friend of mine, actually. Oof, I like this one. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's brilliant. Okay, I can't go into much detail about it. She's very impressive. She's brilliant. She's everything good, you guys. And she's gentle. She's brilliant. Like, I can't find another word to describe her without revealing too much. But, like, she's so impressive, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm in awe of you, right? But there was just so much negative self-talk, and I'm like, who's that talking? Because that's not you. Like, that's not you talking. Who have you been listening to? Who have you been hanging out with? Because clearly they're telling you lies. Or whose voice is so amplified in your life that you've started internalizing that negative self-talk, because that's not who you are. Let's look at the evidence you've created, at the portfolio of your life, to show you how amazing you are. Let's be objective about this thing. Let me not insert myself, because maybe I'll be biased as your friend, right? Let's look at the evidence of things you've done, you've achieved, and the portfolio of your life. What does it say? So why is it that your initial thought right now, your instinct, is to believe negatively about yourself, So that's the importance of an introspection, of reflecting, of taking stock, because you are able to identify certain things that are not of you, but other people's voices. Like, there's a lot of negativity out there, it's quite popular to be negative, but also it's easy to sell to someone who's nervous all the time, who's anxious, because you're not making decisions. You're not making your own decisions. Your nervous system is making those decisions. Your fear is making those decisions. If you think about retail therapy, for instance, like, I remember yesterday walking around Rosebank after my meeting, I was just destabilized, for a particular reason. I was just like, I want to shop, like, I want to feel better. And under normal circumstances, or like historically, the one way that I would use to feel better would be to drink it away or to shop it away. Excuse me. So right now, because I'm training hard and whatnot, I'm very wary of alcohol. And anyway, I had to drive, so I was like, I don't want to be doing that. And I do want to train for my first marathon, for Hyrox as well. So drinking is not something that I'm doing right now. But I was like, okay, I've got this voucher at Poetry. A friend of mine got me this voucher. I can use it. But I couldn't find something that fit. At the same time, I was just like, I need to confront the source of these feelings and not make my problems worse. Under normal circumstances, like, I would spend money, sometimes even money I don't have, just to feel better. And maybe it does momentarily, but the issue doesn't go away. It's still there. So the point I'm making is that when your nervous system is not regulated, when you're not okay, you start making bad decisions that will cost you later. And that's the benefit that whoever controls your mind gets from you not being okay. And the reason you will be okay is if you spend time with yourself, check what's wrong, and find ways to improve that in healthy ways. Our overconsumption of content online isn't making this better. or at least the kind of content that the algorithm pushes is always in the extremes, right? And it's militant, it's polarizing, and that doesn't help to regulate you. When you're regulated, you in a neutral state, like you don't feel so strongly about anything. You just satiated basically by anything. If you're overly angry or you're overly displeased about something, either way, you are not regulated. You're going to make decisions based on the anger or the disappointment or the fear, whatever that emotion is. So my encouragement today is that, hey guys, let's spend time with ourselves. Let's spend time taking stock and checking what's happening inside. It's uncomfortable, but after a while, you learn to find healthier ways to cope with whatever it is happening, and to address those things without the bad decisions doing that for you, without you finding yourself in a worse off place because you've texted someone that you weren't supposed to text, and now you're disappointed with yourself, or you've drank that bottle of something that you swore not to do, or you've overeaten, or whatever the case is, however you choose to regulate your emotions. But if you take stock, it's like being proactive. You aren't reacting to when the situation is bad, I do have to leave you guys because it's time to walk Bobby out, and he's started acting now. So yeah, I've really been thinking about the importance of sitting with ourselves and really confronting what's happening, as opposed to consuming all this content that's available out there, and like thinking about other people's thoughts and what they want you to think about and how they want you to feel about certain things. Let's make those decisions for ourselves and not, be on autopilot. Otherwise, we're gonna be passerbyers in our own lives, and I don't think there's anything more sad. People who are like just living lives because there's a predetermined route that they're supposed to take. Like, oh no, I was supposed to go to school, work, get married, have kids and whatnot, and now they're sitting with these lives that are unrecognizable and they don't even know who they are. There's something so sad about that, and like it feels like you've wasted primitive years of your life, really important years of your life doing these things because they're expected of you and not being a decision maker. So what I'm asking is that let's be participants in our own lives, in our own futures and destinies. Let's make decisions about what we want that to look like, as opposed to letting corporations or algorithms decide that for ourselves. Like, there's barely enough that we can control. So this is the only thing. And yeah, let's do it. Betuna. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I do hope to see you on the next episode. Bye.